Hello, and thank you for contacting Wave Support. I see from your clinical request that your patient is struggling with some comfort. It sounds like they've gotten through their initial week of wear, but they're struggling with a little bit of um, trashy, irritation, probably gritty feeling with these lenses. And so if we take a look here, just a couple thoughts. First impression, if we look at those topographies, they actually look pretty good. This left topography, I suspect there might be some dryness in here, possibly during taking the topography, maybe a little dryness on the surface, so I'd be very suspicious of that, the data on there. But with that said, I still think your designs actually look pretty good. If we look at this right eye for a couple minutes here, you have a very nicely designed lens. I think it lines up very nicely in all the meridians. So just a couple thoughts to try to improve the comfort with this patient. The first thing that comes to mind, if they're able to wear them pretty well, I start wondering, are they just getting lack of tear exchange? Maybe the lens is either too steep, as you maybe thought from your clinical request, or do we just not have enough tear pumping on these lenses? So I think one of the advantages of a Wave, we get a very nice closely fit lens, but one of the disadvantages, sometimes I think we almost get too tight in some of these situations here. So if we look, if you think your design is very nice, one option would be to just look at this lens and increase the tear pump, maybe go into this vertical meridian at 50% and increase the edge lift by using the pink dot, but clicking up on there a couple times in the vertical and inferior meridians, just to try to increase the tear pump in that vertical meridian, so that way you're not shutting off the tear flow. One of the things I tend to look at more closely, though, if you recall from your wave training, this axial design tends to look very nicely at the central data of the cornea, but sometimes it doesn't represent the peripheral area quite as closely in these topographies, whereas tangential tends to look a little bit more precisely at the peripheral data and maybe not quite as accurately at the central data. So the design difference between the two, in a nutshell, you sort of get a little bit flatter lens in tangential that in theory mimics the peripheral cornea better, whereas the axial tends to be a little steeper. So one of the things, my thought is, you want these rigid pieces of plastic to lay down very nicely in this peripheral part of the cornea or the landing zone. So if you prefer to stay in axial, then what I try to do is increase the size of this landing zone by going with a smaller back surface OZ, maybe shrinking up this, bring the red dot in a little bit smaller, or the blue dot in a little bit smaller. Or what I tend to like to do is I just switch over to tangential. What's kind of interesting, if you look at this lens, you might want to try this. If you look at the axial, this is a very nicely lined lens. But if you think about viewing this same exact lens from a tangential perspective, so to speak, what you'll notice real quickly if you just switch over to tangential, you get a lens that's a lot steeper, and you get an area that looks like it starts digging in here a lot more. So you can see a lens where you've got like digging right into the cornea here. So I sort of call this the cookie cutter effect, where that lens is almost kind of digging in. Looks great on the eye, but a lot of these patients will say, gosh, I just don't have great comfort later in the day. I get this kind of awareness, this kind of like it's chafing at my eye type of feel. So in those situations, I'm getting those kind of complaints, and quite often I'll just switch over to tangential, go back here and just let wave redo its thing, and just relay that lens down. So this will create probably a little flatter lens that is probably more nicely aligned in that peripheral area. And I think taking that perspective may just solve a lot of your challenges there. Other thoughts would be, of course, you could go to a larger lens, tuck it even further, and if you have to, if you can't get the comfort, maybe even consider going to a mini scleral design, so that lens will just get rid of all that awareness by setting the landing zone right on the limbus, outside the limbus. So anyways, I hope you find that helpful, but I think those little subtle adjustments will probably get you back on track. It sounds like you're very close, but I wish you well, and thank you for contacting Wave Support. Have a great day.